right, well, I'm going to start getting things kicked off. We are live on the YouTubes, and I will share with you guys our YouTube link. So welcome everyone to the CleanTech Meetup. As I said, we are live. I'm going to go ahead and share the link to our live feed. If you want to go ahead and share that across, social media, that would be great. We're getting more and more people watching us online these days, which is nice and kind of weird. And here's a link to the tweet that we just did of it. Okay. And now I'm going to go to the, official kind of beginning. More people coming in. All right, welcome. I'm Thomas Hall, Executive Director of CleanStart, and this is our CleanTech Meetup. I want to thank Bobby Orrig, Sandra Hall, Peter Cattaneo, Diana Eastman, Rachel Wood, Guy Hall, Peter Mackin, Cynthia, and Victoria Hall for donating to this CleanTech Meetup. If you have an idea and want to connect with CleanStart, please reach out to us at thomas@cleanstart.org. You can also connect with me for coffee over Calendly. And there's a calendar link there in the chat. I want to thank our supporters, SMUD, Blue Tech Valley, and Weintraub Tobin for sponsoring the CleanTech Meetup, along with our wall of heroes, our major donors, and the small donations that we get from everyone throughout the entire year. It really validates what we're doing, and we very much appreciate it. If you want to contribute to CleanStart, I'm dropping a link to our PayPal. We could always use someone feeding my Topo Chico addiction. I also want to highlight that if you want to get involved with SMUD, because we're going to be talking about virtual power plants and all sorts of stuff, they put out solicitations for them. And I'm always surprised at the amount of people who haven't checked their Do Business with SMUD site. So make sure I dropped a link in the chat there that you go and check it out so you can do business with SMUD. So today's agenda is going to be just some announcement, guest presentations, followed by a panel. Our announcements are, we have a busy year this year. In the next month, we have 3 CleanStart perspectives with the Growth Factory, CleanTech Open, and a review of batteries in North America by PEM. Those are all 9 a.m. morning virtual meetings. And the next meetup later in March will be in person. We also have the CleanTech Showcase on April 12th that we're putting on in coordination with SMUD and Startup SAC. So I'm going to drop a link to these slides in the chat because I have everything hyperlinked, and that way you can check out what Startup SAC's doing, you can check out what we're doing, and you can go and register for these events if you're curious to learn more.
I will point out that when we did meetups in person before, we had food and adult beverages. They were a lot of fun, and we want to get back to that. And I think now we're at a point where that is possible. So mark your calendar. We'll probably have pizza and a selection of non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverages. So make good use of that.
And we will be capturing them on video and putting them up on YouTube because we are now getting more attention on YouTube. So if you want to get connected with us through Twitter, Instagram, which we actually don't really use much of, Facebook, LinkedIn, Empower Innovation, that's the CEC's innovation kind of network to connect entrepreneurs and businesses. And also our YouTube, which has now over 100 subscribers, which I am told is absolutely meaningless. But it was an important milestone for me, so I'm happy we crossed it. Speaking of our YouTube, I'm going to put a link to, we have had a lot of discussions around virtual power plants, DERs, community energy, and pretty much every discussion that we have somehow ties back to it. So tonight's discussion on virtual power plants and distributed energy resources. As I said, I am Thomas Hall, Executive Director of CleanStart, and I would like to welcome you to our discussion on virtual power plants and distributed energy resources. This is our 4th meetup on the topic. Additionally, nearly every meetup, mobility, storage, solar, has discussed or mentioned VPPs and DERs. Why? Because the energy transition is impacting the way we interact with energy. For the same reliability, we have to be smarter. We have to use energy smarter, we have to plan smarter, and we have to coordinate supply and demand, not just overbuild supply for resiliency. With that, I would like to welcome our two guests that we have today, Carl Lennox of Sunrun and Jillian Rich of SMUD. First up, we have Jillian Rich. Jillian Rich is a strategic business planner at SMUD. Before that, she was a manager at PG&E. She has spent her professional life, according to her LinkedIn profile, accelerating the energy transition, building partnerships, energy efficiency programs, educating, and staying active in government planning. Please welcome Jillian Rich.
Hi, thank you, Thomas. And thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk today about SMUD's virtual power plants that we're standing up as we speak. And I should say that my audio is disconnected to my video. So maybe, Thomas, you could help me pin my video so that folks can see along. Okay, thanks so much. All right, so let me share my screen. All right. So today we'll cover what is a virtual power plant by SMUD's definition, because every utility has a slightly nuanced definition. And then we'll discuss why SMUD is launching a virtual power plant this year. And what are the specifics of the pilots that we're launching? And lastly, who is eligible? And then I'm really looking forward to your questions. I should say a lot of this information is hot off the presses. I am in charge of overseeing our load flexibility portfolio of customer programs. And we've been really hard at work trying to launch these. Today was an exciting day because our new battery storage incentives, some of the information was released about them. So we'll get into that. And that's directly connected to these virtual power plant programs. So you're going to see a website that's only like 30 minutes old, in fact, and we'll get into that. So first, let's start with what is a virtual power plant. It is a distributed network of energy resources, such as battery storage, electric vehicles, and smart thermostats and other smart devices that replace a natural gas-fired power plant in our case. And so this was part of our zero carbon plan to have more flexible load resources instead of relying on natural gas, especially during our peak periods. It's very different for a utility to depend on these distributed resources, right? Instead of something reliable and known. These are assets that are owned by the customer. They aren't owned by SMUD. And so in mass, like we're sort of crowdsourcing energy, right? It's like I like to akin it to, if you remember back in the day, you used to have Napster and you used to download a song from a specific source and it would always fail. This is more like the BitTorrent world, right? Where you're getting little pieces of energy from all over the community. And so it's rather exciting and something that as an organization requires some change in mentality. So why are we doing it? I think all of you on the call, because you've been hopefully part of these talks before, know about SMUD's zero carbon plan and how innovative it is for the nation. We do want to reach it by 2030 as a public utility. That's pretty unheard of. And the way we're going to do it is through these 4 pillars. The way the virtual power plant work fits in here is that 3rd pillar, new technology and business models. So the other ones, we're going to get rid of as much natural gas-fired power as we can. We're going to have a lot of clean, proven technology like utility scale solar and storage. But the new technology is about how we reach behind the meter and really tap into those assets. And so that's where we'll go into today, the pilots that we're launching this year that we'll hope to grow and scale and really become part of our operating bread and butter by the time 2030 rolls around. So let's look at the numbers, because I think that's where the meat is, right? So on the left, you have our energy transition that comes along with 2030. So here we are in 2020 when we wrote our zero carbon plan. We were 55% carbon free. And then by 2030, we want to get to 100%. We have a little bit of a gap left that we need to fill with a lot of innovation, and we have some time and some plans around that. But you see in gray, the little gray wedge, that's what we're talking about here. Behind the meter, solar, storage, and distributed energy resources that we could tap into as the utility, where we can, I should say that where we partner with the customer. Where the customer gives us access to that distributed energy resources in return for usually utility bill savings. On the right, you see our capacity, so like our load stack. And so the gray again are the programs that we're launching today to really encourage storage adoption, encourage solar adoption, et cetera, et cetera. And so for that, I'll just say that going back to the definition of a virtual power plant, something very important to SMUD is that the resource is guaranteed, that it's firm. And what that means is that we have an aggregator or someone between us and SMUD working to orchestrate the distributed energy resources to make sure that that power will in fact be delivered, and that there's a guarantee that we have contractually with that aggregator to make sure that it's truly delivered. Because the last thing we want to do is impact reliability. Reliability is huge for all of our customers. I'm a customer, myself included, especially now that we're all working from home. And so we need to make sure that if we're depending on the resource, especially during a peak period, that it's truly going to be delivered. There's no risk of say a large amount of customers going ahead and saying, "Oh, I'm too hot. I'm going to turn down my thermostat," and then the load goes away. So we like to be as less risky as possible. Okay, so now we get into what the details of the virtual power plant. So we're really framing it as a win-win for the customer and SMUD. And the reason for that is because the customer is reducing their electric bill, they're improving their environmental sustainability. And if they're installing storage alongside their solar system, which we really, really want, they're adding resiliency and maximizing their return on investment. And then by giving SMUD access to signal that storage device or signal their devices, they're assisting us in achieving our community zero carbon plan, which is good for us, good for the community to have that carbon-free, reliable power. Okay, so the details, which I'm sure you all are wanting me to get to. So here's just some quick facts. So who is eligible? Residential customers. We're not sure about commercial yet, but the majority of our customers are residential. And so that's where we're starting. And what exactly are the devices that will be eligible for the program? To start off this year, just smart thermostats and battery storage. We will add electric vehicle chargers or electric vehicles themselves via telematics in 2 years. And we have some small research demonstration projects that we're launching this year to build towards that more mass market or large scale offering. How much? So the incentives are $50 to $250 per kWh of battery capacity. So that's a max of anywhere from $500 to $2,500, and we'll get into the details of those later. And then thermostats are $50 per household, and there are incentives along the way, of course, because you're partnering with SMUD. You know, we're getting benefit from your device to have cleaner resources on the grid. So there's compensation for that. Throughout every year, an annual sort of payment mechanism. Okay, and then lastly, when the storage in 5 days, if you apply for storage on or after March 1st, you're able to apply for the new storage incentives. And then the programs will be up and running in a few months by the time those storage systems are online. And then thermostats, we're going to launch by June 1st. So let's talk about the thermostat customer experience specific to SMUD. So for this one, we chose Uplight as our technology aggregator, and they're providing load flexibility through device automation. This is a really classic program. It's not anything truly new. Utilities across the nation have done bring your own device type programs for automated demand response. Again, the really only new part here is that we're having the same implementer for storage and thermostats, and then adding electric vehicles later with the hope that they can orchestrate all three devices to really firm up and guarantee that load shed. So that's the pilot that we're really getting at, is can someone with multiple distributed energy resources under their purview help synchronize them in order to firm the load and give us longer durations of load shed. And so that's what we'll be researching over the next 2 years. In the meantime, our customers will hopefully have a great experience, because this is sort of a tried and true customer program where we call peak events, just like flex alerts that you get in California. We would call our own SMUD peak events. You'd get a text, you get an email, whatever you prefer, and it'd say, hey, tomorrow from say, I don't know, 7 to 9 p.m., we're having a peak alert. And so please do your best to shed load. But we'd make it easy for the customer, because their thermostat would automatically pre-cool the home before the event occurs, and then turn the thermostat up like a couple degrees, I think 2 to 3 degrees, depending on your preferences. And so it'd be sort of set it and forget it. That should do the trick. And then there's also, for customers who do really well in this program, select ones will be signed up for a new rate called critical peak pricing that you can kind of think as of time of use or time of day on steroids. It gives you higher highs and lower lows during those peak events, so that you can have bill savings as well as your ongoing benefit. Thomas, let me know if I'm totally over on time. Okay. And then let's go over batteries real quick, because I think that there's a lot of solar and battery customers on the line. So this is our virtual power plant. The new name for it, drum roll please, is called My Energy Optimizer. We always let our customers pick our programs, our program names. We have a panel that where they vote. And so about 500 customers weighed in, and My Energy Optimizer was the winner. So I like it because we are working with you to optimize the way you use energy in order to optimize for carbon, for money savings, you name it. So here are the 3 levels. There's starter, partner, and partner plus. If you have a battery, you can sign up for these things. They require you moving on to the solar and storage rate, which is SMUD's new NEM replacement, energy metering replacement. They're all per kWh. So these are the maximums. So it's $50, $150, and $250 per kWh. The starter is pretty much just synchronizing it for our time of day rate, which it already should, a mode it should already be in. So it's sort of just an incentive. And then the partner and partner plus are where you really get into the mutually beneficial relationship. With partner, we'll be calling peak events only in the summer. So if you're the kind of customer that only wants to be bothered in the summer or doesn't really want to sign up for the full partner plus, then that's a good middle ground. It signs you up for that critical peak pricing rate where you get the on-bill benefits from signing up for those peak events and then using your storage during the peak event to power your home instead of using the grid. And then Partner Plus is a program we're launching right now. I don't have too many details about it because it's currently out for solicitation. And so that one, the request that we've put out to the industry is that we use the leverage the storage system more on a regular basis throughout the year. And so they're truly a partner with SMUD for our clean power vision. And let's see, where are we heading? My last slide. This was a chart from our zero carbon plan that I stole, and a lot of the terminology in it has changed, I should say. But the key thing I wanted you to see is just we're in that gray zone. And I love that they picked the color gray because it is really gray. You know, we're testing a lot of things, making sure again that we can really rely upon these virtual power plant resources to make sure we have safe and reliable energy. But then in 2023, 24, our intent is to make a decision and scale it up and really go for it. My kids gave me a cold. And so again, this will get us, as you can see at the bottom, we have a pretty large increase in load that we want to have come from virtual power plants as we get towards 2030. So I'm excited for the moonshot. I'm excited to partner with our customers. I think all of us, just speaking on a personal note, look for something we can do that's new for the climate to help with the state that we're in. And so I think that we're trying to make this an easy way to join up. And so I'm happy to take questions, but I'll stop there for my content. Thanks, Thomas.
All right, thank you very mull ask everyone to hold their questions for the panel. And all right, I'd like to welcome Carl Linox. Carl Linox is a Senior Director in Electrification and Advanced Product Management at Sunrun. He has deep expertise in solar, battery storage, EVs, and other distributed energy resources, spanning technology, policy, markets, and strategy. Prior to that, he was a principal at Total Energies and a solution architect at SunPower. He has a LinkedIn profile that's in all caps. Please welcome Carl Linox.
Let me unmute myself. Thank you. Very happy to be here. Looking forward to giving you a little bit of a view on how we look at virtual power plants and get into some discussion. So let me share my screen, which is here. All right. All right, you're all seeing my presentation at this point? All good. All right, cool. So yeah, so just want to talk a little bit about Sunrun and how we're thinking about unlocking residential distributed energy resources. So if you don't know about Sunrun, we were founded in 2007. We're focused entirely on the residential solar and storage market in the US, both single family and multifamily. We pioneered residential solar as a service. So what we call a third-party owned offering, where you sort of pay every month for the electricity that you receive from the solar panels on your roof and now from the battery on the outside of your house or your garage, providing a variety of services ranging from resiliency or battery backup in the case of an outage, to energy rate arbitrage, to grid services as aggregated into virtual power plants. We currently have over 660,000 customers. We actually added 110,000 customers just this last year. We operate across 22 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. So getting into it a little bit. So why DERs? Actually, I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, cool. So from our point of view, flexible residential DERs are really critical and key to running an efficient grid. There have been a lot of studies on this, actually, some really good work out of Vibrant Clean Energy, I point you to in particular, that really looks at if you really kind of co-optimize grid operations with distributed energy resources, not just as kind of negative load, but as a dynamic resource, you end up with a situation where kind of the lowest costed system for everybody and the cleanest system for everybody is one that has a fairly high share of distributed energy resources. And so that's the future that we're really looking to lead and be part of. We need to electrify our economy. So not only are we talking about serving the load that we have today, but serving the load that we're going to have tomorrow as we roll off the fossil gas infrastructure, as we roll off the fossil fuel, gasoline, diesel fuel infrastructure for our vehicles. And there have been some interesting studies out of Rewiring America, for example, that find that on average, a fully electrified household in the US would save almost $2,000 per year. In fact, if you look at kind of where natural gas and gasoline prices are going, at least projecting current trends, it could be quite a lot higher than that, unfortunately. But in order to do that, we have to massively build out clean generation. We do believe, though, despite the fact that we're growing the pie, we could actually power half the economy just using rooftop solar, based on kind of the technical availability of that resource. But in order to do that, we really need to be able to optimize how those resources participate in the market. So, you can't just kind of like bolt a bunch of solar and storage and dispatch it in a really simple way and expect that to work. It really has to be operating in a very dynamic way with the power system, understanding the constraints of that system, both at the wholesale and distribution level, and interacting with other distributed energy resources, be they heat pumps, energy storage, EV chargers, and the like. So I'll give a couple of case studies of where we're at today. We're currently operating across about 12 different grid services programs or virtual power plants all over the U.S. These programs range, from sort of bilateral type of contracts with the utility to procurement type of programs structured in all sorts of different ways, and so it's been really interesting to understand how different utilities look at solving this problem and how they procure clean flexibility from the edge of the grid. One example I think is quite neat is East Bay Community Energy. They're a community choice aggregator, obviously, in the East Bay, and this is all focused on affordable multifamily housing, MASH, in West Oakland and Alameda County. So we actually put solar on these apartment buildings. We deliver bill savings to the residents via virtual net metering, and then we provide backup power for critical common area loads. So if you're in a 3 or 4 story building, that means that if the power goes out, you can still get in your elevator. You don't have to walk down 4 flights of stairs. You have lighting in your hallways and in your common areas. We're able to continue to run air conditioning and make sure that you really have a safe place to be during a power outage. In addition to that, we're actually able to aggregate those storage assets into a VPP to deliver capacity and under a resource adequacy program to EBCE, and that's actually bidding that capacity directly into CAISO markets via proxy demand response, so PDR. The nice thing about this is it's actually sitting in a load pocket in Oakland, and is going to allow EBCE to retire. I believe it's actually a jet fuel powered peaker plant that sits there down near Jack London Square. So it's a huge win, bill savings for the residents, improvement in resiliency, and direct reduction in pollution, like in an urban community in Oakland. At kind of a different scale, we're also participating, for example, in ISO New England. So this is direct participation into a wholesale market. We basically have a wholesale capacity contract where we're aggregating behind the meter resources, again, as an on-peak demand resource. These are, when I say, in this case, the behind the meter resources are single-family residential batteries. And it's basically based on what we can dispatch out of those batteries during certain time periods, and it's directly metered. So unlike some kind of traditional demand response programs where you're basically netting out the response or trying to baseline the response against what the utility sees at the homes meter, at the utility meter, we're actually metering the output of the inverter directly, so that we can, to the point, like demonstrate that we've delivered what we said we were going to deliver. And this is actually all happening under net energy metering tariff, so that the customers can continue to export and get credit for the energy they export across the meter. And we're in the process of building that out. It will ultimately be around 5,000 to 10,000 homes operating across these different wholesale load zones in New England. So those are just two examples of the kind of programs that we participate in with virtual power plants. But very, very exciting for us. We start talking about electric vehicles. We are actually partnered with Ford in the rollout of their F-150 Lightning, which is a extremely exciting truck. I think it's really the iconic American pickup truck, and seeing that become not just electrified, but like a really amazing vehicle. It's just such a cool thing, and it's such a wonderful thing to be able to be part of that. What we're doing with Ford is we're actually we co-developed and are installing EV chargers for these vehicles, and we actually are working with them. Co-developed a bi-directional EV charging inverter, so that the truck can actually share power first with the house. So initial use case is that when in the case where the grid is down, the truck can actually power your house, the entire house, for up to 3 days, or even longer if you carefully manage your energy usage. So quite a long time. Then we certainly have a roadmap and a desire to move to being able to actually use that truck as a behind the meter resource when the home is connected to the grid. So for electricity bill management, time of use, and so forth. And then ultimately, would love to see the ability to actually export energy from the vehicle to the grid in a vehicle to grid true bidirectional grid services modality. So a lot of exciting things to come there. Yeah, so with that, thank you for your time and listening to what I had to say, and would love to answer your questions. And if not, if we don't get to it today, absolutely feel free to shoot me a note, and happy to engage. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Well, both to Carl and to Jillian, round of applause for great presentations, stimulating a lot of questions. So let's turn to the discussion part of this. And please, if you have questions, enter them into the chat. We'll be getting some of them on the fly. Some of them I'll ask Thomas to help me make sure that we include them in the discussion. But let me just ask a few initial questions here to get the discussion going. And coming back to what you were just talking about, vehicle to grid connection, Carl. We've had discussions on this before, where the state of the technology is. I guess the impression that we got out of those discussions is bi-directional charging, not quite ready for prime time. There's a lot of issues to work through there. And of course, the Lightning program you have with Ford could be a big advance. But timing wise, when do you think you're going to have the mature tools on the technology side to have pretty general and widespread vehicle to grid capability?
Sure. Yeah. No. Great question. I think it's actually a very interesting question for me, because actually the technology is not so different from what we have today with residential batteries. The challenges or barriers, I would say, are actually more on the kind of regulatory side, and the ability for those type of resources to be to participate in the market. I think the real sort of philosophical issue here is that you have a battery that isn't there all the time, and isn't necessarily charging off solar all the time. And so if you look at kind of the regulatory structure under which batteries have been interconnected in the US, there's been an assumption, or that in order to qualify for that type of interconnection, that it's actually charged from solar. Obviously, if you have a truck running around, you don't necessarily know that. And so you also don't necessarily know if the truck is there or not at any given time, right? So if you go to dispatch it, like, is it sitting in the garage, or is it sitting in the parking lot of the shopping center? The bigger sort of technical issue is if you're going to say, now I'm going to go get the electrons off the truck, and you want that to be bidirectional, you sort of think about, like, what does interconnection mean? Like, how do you interconnect a resource that's moving around? How do you know where it is in the distribution grid? How do you know, like, how that's going to interact with what other constraints happen to be there at that time? So unlike, a fixed asset where you know where it is, here you potentially have to, like, negotiate essentially a contract with the vehicle as it moves around the grid topology, and that's kind of the bigger, technical challenge.
Well, go ahead, Jillian.
Oh, thanks. And from a utility perspective, that's a real challenge, right? We're used to our assets and our customers being fixed in the ground, right? Buildings. And so then you have this mobile resource that's huge. We often say a car can be as much as a home in terms of electricity usage and grid impact and grid needs. And so just in terms of our V2G, V1G perspective, and we're preparing, I guess, for that future. But I agree that future isn't quite here yet. But we're glad that it's not quite here yet, because I think me personally, I am, because we have a lot of prep work to do, which we're doing.
I would say, like, in the use case of of a home. So putting aside the issue of the battery, the vehicle moving around, participating wherever it may be. If you do have like a fixed asset like an inverter, and it's there and it's interconnected, and that it's interconnected in a place where it can provide good services and export, it's actually really no different from the battery, right? So hopefully we can get there.
Yeah, I think the interesting part for me is I've been delivering customer programs for a long time, and I think that utilities are really used to a direct model straight to the customer. But with load flexibility programs in particular, you're working in B2G, you're working through the manufacturer, and the manufacturer is really leading the charge in many ways, because they want to have their own customer experience for that customer. They want to own most of the relationship. And so the utility really takes a bit of a backseat. And so that's new, I think, for us. And so we've been working through like how we make sure that we're having our customers are having a good experience on the program, when so much of it is controlled, say, like by the Nest app for rush hour rewards, or Eco Plus, or controlled by BMW or Nissan or Ford's app for how your car charges.
And then if they need clarification.
But yeah, that was all I was gonna
Getting a comment there from the dog. I didn't quite catch what he was asking. Well, this is an interesting area that the utilities and aggregators like Sunrun are stepping into, where on load flexibility and its use for resilience for peak loads really becomes a problem of statistics and probability. Lots of things are moving around. I don't know whether you have customer overrides on the thermostats. Many utility programs do, but some of that is offset if things just become more ubiquitous. For example, let me get to a specific question. Bi-directional charging. Peter, do you see that solely on homes and maybe ultimately in commercial office building parking lots, or is the cost difference sufficiently small that we could have bi-directional charging at like the level 2 chargers or at Rayleigh's, or maybe even some of the level 3 fast chargers? How do you see that technology rolling out in terms of what cost you add by having a bi-directional inverter with control on it from the utility versus the garden variety we have now? Is it hugely more expensive?
Sorry, was that for me?
Yeah, that's for Carl.
Okay. So yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it depends on how you do it. So I think the kind of the base case, I would say, of bi-directional V2G actually has traditionally been kind of a fast charger, right? So a DC fast charger with a fixed inverter that are probably in a 50 kilowatt class. And those are quite expensive, and they've really been kind of a niche, almost like a pilot kind of experimental thing.
Yes.
I think as we move, so there's two things that are kind of coming down the road. So, and it's actually changed my attitude about this, because I for a very long time was actually, believe it or not, very skeptical of V2G, but I've changed my tune. So one is that at a residential level, because you have this tremendous resiliency benefit, the hardware to do kind of like the total level 2 V2G is, again, it's not so different from what we're already putting in homes. So think of that kind of size of inverter. That's the cost structure, right? And then you can start to think about how you share that inverter with other resources, so you really defray that cost. And so if you're already kind of have that there for resiliency, then in fact, like the incremental cost for grid services from a hardware perspective, there is none, right? So that really changes the game. The other thing that I think is coming down the road, and this will be a little further down the road, but there's AC V2G. So instead of connecting to an off-board inverter, more and more vehicles will be coming with a bidirectional inverter on board the vehicle. And at that point, you can actually export from the vehicle without anything other than a simple charging cable. So then it becomes much more of a software play, right?
Well, that's interesting. What incentive do manufacturers have of bringing that on board versus making it a customer expense. Usually car manufacturers are trying to cut down the number of costly items they have in cars. So what would they get out of it by putting it on the car? Would some of the incentive potentially, in your vision, be coming from the utility to the car manufacturer to have that capability?
Well, Ford is building this into the new electric 150, F-150 already. So they're perceiving some economic benefit to themselves in doing it, probably because they can sell more vehicles because they have this capability.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Mark Henwood talking. He's co-founder of CleanTech. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, guys.
But I mean, we have talked with like Tesla and several others, and the first reaction when we started talking about vehicle to grid and connecting into some of the systems of Tesla was, if you do that, you're going to avoid the warranty, and we don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that attitude is changing, Mark. But
I think it is. I mean, we're seeing in Europe, for example, that some vehicles, like one use case for it is actually just the ability to like run something off your vehicle if you're camping or
right.
whatever, right? So like the F-150, for example, has a 240 volt outlet in the bed. It has 9.6 kilowatts of available power on the truck. So you can be out boondocking and, run a full campsite, right?
Yeah.
Run a concert if you want. So that's like a game changing.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Yeah. So, I mean, the ad was serious in December when they showed the F-150 powering the lights on the outside of somebody's home. You would have that much kW capacity. You could do something like that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, 9.6, I think it's 9.6 kilowatts, isn't it, Carl?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can power quite a bit of stuff with 9.6 kilowatts, and yeah, it's AC, so you would probably be a minor cost addition to be able to synchronize your truck to the grid, right? And then adjust the voltage to push power out of your truck into the grid. And the technology may not be really difficult, controlling it, having a centralized control to use it might be a bigger challenge, but the actual technology of doing it may not be that big a deal.
And if there's one thing we've learned, the energy transition is easier than it looks. That was a joke, but I saw some people's eyes go down.
but to the point, right? I mean, I think this is Mary Powell, our newish CEO, who actually came over from Green Mountain Power, so she was former utility CEO and COO. She likes to talk about like radical collaboration between companies like Sunrun and utilities like SMUD, and I think like it actually is really important that we work together in general to like make all this happen, because utilities they're the connective tissue for all this, right? Like it's literally a network, and reliability is sacrosanct, right? So we have to like do everything that utilities have done for 100 plus years, and like do even more and do it even better and do it more collaboratively. And that's the challenge. That's the fun, right?
I do want to turn back to one of the questions I saw in the chat that I think, because we're planning a vehicle to grid chat eventually in the future. So let's save a lot of the questions for that. But one of the things that I saw in the chat that I think is really important is that where and kind of what are the security or measures that are be taken when implementing virtual power plants from the utility side of it. You have software going into people's homes helping them make better decisions, but you also have bad actors out there that are poking and prodding away at it. So where is this being controlled from third-party cloud sets that any customer could pick up, or is it something that SMUD's keeping close to home and local?
Yeah, let's close that one to Jillian. So when you talk to your IT people about what you're doing, are they about ready to shoot you?
No, luckily not. SMUD and all utilities have a long history of working with third-party generating assets, and all of that relies on software. So there's really good standards and security reviews. Ever since, remember when New York had that blackout scare and they thought it was a cyber attack? Ever since then, the utility world is, and even before that, but since then especially, has been taking cybersecurity really seriously. And so we can rely upon those protocols and those in-depth reviews when we onboard a new vendor. In terms of controlling the load, SMUD is in the process of upgrading significantly our distributed energy resource management system. It's been a multi-year project that will help orchestrate all of our different energy resources, whether they're owned or not owned by us. And so it's part of that gray area to, test that system. And then by the time we scale these offerings up and hopefully grow them, that system will be live and be able to orchestrate the distributed VPP load, as well as all of our other types of assets like solar and wind and biomass and you name it. So that's I think that answers your question.
Yeah, no,
I'll just one quick comment on that too. I think it's a great question. Cybersecurity is really important. I think it's something that everybody takes extremely seriously with distributed energy resources. I'll also say that the ability to successfully execute a large-scale attack that's of a scale and sufficiently coordinated to create a large enough impact on the power grid to disrupt it is actually quite difficult compared to what you would take to execute a very sophisticated attack on a single utility scale resource. And we know that that's a vulnerability. I mean, you can go to NERC and FERC and read the reports, and there's been a lot of work on this over the years, but especially today, like I'm sure it's top of a lot of people's minds. There's a lot of people going through lines of Fortran and embedded controllers trying to figure out if there's a worm in there somewhere. So just my only point is there's vulnerabilities, like there's many vulnerabilities throughout the system, and we have to take them very seriously, and we do.
Agreed. And one more thought that came to mind is part of the reason why we have 3 storage program options is because we wanted to give customers choices. And so we knew that customers have different levels of comfort with automation of devices. Like you think about your group of friends. My mom uses Alexa for everything. She uses it to turn on the lights when she goes into her house. And then I have friends who don't want a thing to do with those devices and would never have one, or Google Home in their home. So we had to think of that spread. And so that's why like that middle level, the partner level, it's really just a price signal. It's turning your battery storage system kind of like it allows it to read a stock ticker, if you will, and it'll know when that peak event price is added on, and it'll go, oh, I don't want that price. Let's go ahead and charge my home. So I'm not using grid power. Whereas the higher level, there is more of like that where we're going to be signaling it to discharge and charge, like maybe upwards of, one discharge and one charge per day in order, whenever we need clean energy resources to reach our goal. So the different levels is something that your question reminded me of that I thought I'd comment on.
Yeah, let me just, you said something in there that I had written out a question about. You've got a critical peak pricing program coming into SMUD. And I assume that has some narrow slices when the prices could be quite high in order to incentivize the right behavior and getting people to shed load. Could you tell us a little bit more about what's involved in your critical peak pricing program? Not easy to say.
Sure, it's residential only. You can go to smud.org/CPP and find out the details. The pricing changes every year, but the structure is the same. It says that there's about 50 hours every summer where we'll call a peak event. So that's roughly about 15 events throughout the whole summer. So June 1st to September 30th. The events will be 1 to 4 hours in duration, and they'll likely be on the hottest days. So those days when, we watch KCRA3 and they're saying, oh, it's going to be a scorcher, everyone reduce your power because we don't want any bad impacts or to save air quality, spare the air. It'll be on those days. We all know those days. And so if you're already someone who, like me, that does it out of the goodness of their heart, it gets you paid for that because you get a 1.36% discount on all your energy off peak and mid peak throughout the whole summer. And in exchange, though, during those peak events, you get 50 cents per kWh additional. So you really do have to be smart and pay attention to those peak events. For those of you that have solar or storage, if you export any excess energy back to the grid during those peak events, you also get 50 cents per kWh for that exported energy.
Seems like a substantial incentive then. Is there any minimum that you have to be able to provide with that, or is it just in response to that pricing, whatever you want?
Right. They're just you get an incentive to sign up for the rate. So that works, just in case like it isn't a good fit for you, that upfront incentive should cover you for your first summer, we found in our modeling. So then you can always, if you don't like the rate, if it doesn't work for you, you can get out before next summer.
And that raises a question I had down here. I mean, there's been a lot of experiments with utilities trying to do this flexible load thing. And I, as a utility executive long ago in my career, actually was involved in that. One of the things is if you continue to call on it, there was a disintegration in the response over time. But we did at that point let people opt out if they just didn't like what was going on. What's the experience now in terms of what you think the challenge might be of people basically getting fatigued being called on to flex loads?
Yeah, event fatigue is a real thing. And I'm interested in Carl's opinion on it too. But the way that we do that is really leveraging these third-party aggregators that have launched these programs throughout the nation. When we bid out the work, we really looked for their expertise, and they came to us with findings like, for instance, if there's a heat storm and you do a multi-day event, they had learned things like how to synchronize the messaging. So you don't send them 8 text messages over 4 days, you only send 3, right? You kind of combine things like, hey, you did good yesterday and tomorrow it's happening again, and it'll be from 4 to 6 this time. So to get the clarity, SMUD actually ran a pilot last summer. It was a behavioral peak load reduction program. And we found the same thing, that it really takes careful messaging with our customers to let them know when we're looking for them to reduce load, how and why, in order for us to see those savings persist. But in general, SMUD customers really knocked it out of the park. There was hardly any event fatigue compared to other experiences by other utilities. So I'm always very impressed by SMUD customers and how gung-ho they are for these types of programs.
Carl, what's your experience been like in this issue? You are trying to be an aggregator, and so directly confronting this problem with customer behavior.
Well, yeah. So actually, for us, this is one of the reasons why we like batteries, because there's nothing behavioral in it. We just need to make sure that we have a reserve set aside for events, and then that energy is there and we dispatch it. It has no impact on the customer whatsoever. I will say though that there are definitely ways. Things have come a long way from the old days of direct load control, where you're turning somebody's compressor off, or 50%. With bring your own device programs, in a lot of cases you can actually shed a significant amount of load, like in aggregate, right? With changes in set points that customers either don't notice or don't mind, right? And so, especially if you kind of run strategies like pre-cooling a little bit and then letting them do a little drive and float, that's those types of strategies are useful. Also, you can, through machine learning, you can now kind of better forecast and optimize who you dispatch and when you dispatch, and make sure you don't use the same people every day. So you do maybe have to build up a larger portfolio, and you maybe going to get less performance per household, but you can get very consistent and predictable performance out of the portfolio. Back to your point about it being a statistical problem, it's really a stochastic optimization problem that we're moving into. And the nice thing about that is, if any one resource doesn't show up when you expected it to, it doesn't really matter, because you have something else you can kind of put into its place and make it up, right? It's not like a single power plant, if you're having an unplanned outage, right, where well, boy, I just lost a couple hundred megawatts.
Right.
It's a little more fault tolerant than that, right?
Well, I think Sunrun's been involved. Certainly, you've mentioned being involved with ISO New England. I think you're involved with PJM. Are there any things out of those programs that you'd recommend that California be looking at, or that SMUD be looking at to incorporate into their VPP and DER programs?
That's a great question. I think in general, one of the things that we like to see is seeing like direct metering of the inverter, being able to say, like, rather than settling against like a baseline type of program where you're trying to compute the counterfactual of like what would have happened, and then give credit for what the modeled, sort of adjusted modeled result of what did happen. Like, let's just measure it. So that's maybe like a simple thing that we prefer.
I think a lot of that's incorporated in what you're doing at SMUD, Jillian, at least it's the impression I got. So yeah, we've all been learning.
Yeah, our meeting, I came from PG&E, and so SMUD's metering for solar and storage took me by surprise when I came here, but it was a good surprise. It allows us to have a lot of data available.
And what's your plan? I mean, SMUD generally upgrades their plans every year, but there's a window open for signups now, 3/1 to 6/1 of this year. Do you foresee that there would be a similar window each year to get people into the program?
Thanks for asking that. So you can sign up at any time after March 1st. Yeah, it's open. There's no application window. You do have to have a storage system already installed to apply. If you are looking to get a storage system, then it's embedded in the application that your installer completes with SMUD to be authorized to install the equipment. SMUD is closely ingrained in the process to get a permit for a solar and storage system with all of our local government agencies. So as part of that required process, it'll ask you which incentive you would like, and then it'll all go from there. So I've tried to make it as easy as possible. The Thermostat program is one where in May, if you already have a smart thermostat, you'll get an email or a push notification from your device manufacturer telling you about this program and asking you to join it. So look for that. If for some reason you don't get it, you've likely turned off your settings in some way. And so you can also go to our website and find the information there in May.
All right. And SMUD has had for a number, well, not that many years, but you've been doing the solar shares program for off-sites solar farms. Is there a version of that that's a storage share program?
We have storage shares for commercial customers. Yes, but for residential customers, not at this moment.
Okay. Any plans in that area?
It's a good question. I don't think anything immediate. If it will be, it'll be in the far future. We had a lot of changes related to solar this year, so I think we didn't want to add anything else to the mix. So it would be in 2023 and beyond if we ever went there. Our changes are really our new rate, and then also we have virtual solar that's starting for low-income households or income qualified multifamily properties where they can virtually share the solar amongst the tenants. And then we also have these new storage incentives starting. So anything new will likely again be next year, but it's being floated.
So we missed your page on your battery storage program. And is there anything else you want to add about the battery storage program? You've sort of touched on some of the points here, but is there anything else that we would benefit from knowing on that program?
So again, the middle level partner, we already have our implementer Uplight, and then the highest level partner plus is out for bid right now. And so if you have any industry folks on the line, look for that and feel free to email me if you can't find any information on it. And then from a customer perspective, I'd just go onto our website and let us know if you have feedback on it. We do, I put it in the chat. It's our battery storage for homeowners website. And if you already have battery storage, we'd love if you sign up. We have had battery storage pilots ongoing for quite a number of years now. And so those pilots will still stay in existence and we'll slowly transition the customers over to these new ones. We have a exciting, healthy storage market in SMUD territory. So really looking forward to these new programs to make it even healthier.
Okay, great. Thomas, did you say there was some questions we need to bring up from the chat?
Oh yeah, so I wanted to call on Peter, who has an idea to solve vehicle to grid.
Well, okay, I guess it's not necessarily a way to solve it, but way back at the beginning, the discussion was that, you don't know where the car is, blah blah blah, and it could be moving or whatever, but in reality, there's only so many chargers, right? Or ports in which the vehicle can plug into, and those ports are all connected to the distribution network. So the capacity of every one of those ports. So essentially, all you really have to map is those ports, and then in real time, is there a vehicle connected to those ports, and can it provide power? So it's to me, it's not that hard. I mean, there's a lot of places, a lot of the matrix is huge, but the concept isn't. I don't think it's that hard. And as long as the vehicle can provide, no more power than that port can take, then you're fine. You just accept it and be done with it.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of learning done when we start using those systems more broadly.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, there is that issue with the batteries, but as far as warranty issues, but I will say that I attended, and I think, well, Guy was on the presentation too. There was a presentation by the Canadian Electric Vehicle Association a month or so ago, and there are, I don't know if I'd say breakthroughs, but there's discussion of 5 million kilometer batteries. And if you've got a battery that can last that long, you can do daily charge and discharge, vehicle to grid, basically every day. So, that's probably not going to be an issue in the future.
Yeah, and I will point out that the upcoming perspectives event we have on batteries with PEM, the company in Germany that's got a facility here, will be a good one where we'll have a discussion on just where is the frontier in battery technology now. So I'll put on a pitch for that. In terms of where Sunrun is, definitely its roots are in the residential sector, not doing much in commercial now. But Sunrun's been pretty aggressive in acquiring things and creating the kind of programs that you're in charge of now. Do you see Sunrun moving into the commercial area and doing some of the optimization and control strategies with those customers that you may have gotten experience with on residential?
We don't currently have any plans to move into the commercial and industrial space. We certainly, as I said, we're in the multifamily market, which is adjacent, but honestly, like, there's just an enormous opportunity still ahead of us in the residential space. We've only penetrated 3% of the market in the US. Beyond solar and storage, there's many other things that we can be doing. So that's where we're focused today.
Okay, so what are some of the things beyond solar and storage?
To be continued. Well, EV charging for one.
Good teaser.
Yeah. Sign up with Sunrun. You can sign up with Sunrun, you'll find out.
Yeah, I missed the number of customers that you had now. You said you were adding something over 100,000 this year, but what was the figure you used?
We have 660,000 customers currently. So we are the number one solar and storage provider and residential solar and storage provider in the US by some margin.
Yeah, no, fantastic. All right, Thomas, other questions that have come in from those who are watching?
There's been some good discussion. We've had, I think, 11 people watching online, which is always a good amount to add to things. And I think if we don't have any more questions, we're going to wrap it up, I guess.
All right, well, that's fantastic. Again, it's so nice to have experts like you, Jillian and Carl, and a round of applause to our presenters and all the answers they gave us today.
Thank you, Jillian.
Great job.
Yeah, and thank you for having us. And please feel free to email me. It's just my first name, period, my last name is smud.org. If you have any questions.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
Michael,
We have a lot of stuff in the chat. If people want to note there on email addresses, locations where you can pick up documents. Heidi Pyle from SMUD has been very good about putting that in there. So please, before we close off the session, look at the chat room. And Carl, I'm sure that we've got your email address too. And I'm sure you'll be willing to answer questions that follow up. So you're in Oakland and you're in California now. You're going to be in SMUD's service territory soon?
We shall see. Would love to.
Okay.
All right. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank our presenters. I also encourage everyone to check the recording of this out on YouTube along with our past recordings. Also, if you believe in what you're doing, please support Clean Start and visit us there. And also, I want to say thank you to SMUD, Blue Tech Valley, and Wine Shop Tobin for being sponsors of the CleanTech Meetup. Our overall program sponsors are Reverend Greenberg Towerig, Hacker Lab, where I'm at right now, and Moss Adams, and our community partners. Thank you for attending. Hopefully see you all in person in the future. But remember, we still have the Clean Start perspectives in the mornings that you can join and check out. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for participating.
Thank you.
Great job.
Good job, everyone. Yep. I'm
That was
ending all the
fantastic.
streams and stuff. That was really good. I really wanted to promote what you had mentioned you were going to talk about, Jillian, but I did it. But you also said you weren't sure. So I'm like, don't tell everyone SMUD's going to do something before they tell you. So that was actually really exciting.
Oh, which part? Sorry.
Because you said that you had mentioned that SMUD would be doing their residential VPP program and releasing the website and the program.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
At the beginning of the month.
I know, and it happened today. I didn't even know it was going to happen today. And then I got my customer newsletter in my personal email, and I went, "What?"
Surprise!
and then all the emails started flooding in, and people started applying for the program who don't even have storage yet, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, you guys!" So no,
Well,
it's all good. We love the interest. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was great timing today.
Because you had mentioned something like that was going to happen, and I wanted to go and tell everyone that it was going to get announced today and everything. And I'm like, you know what? I don't, I've seen people announce things too soon, and it never goes well. So
Thanks for that.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll have an edited version of this sometime next week, and I think it'll be good. We actually had total of 19 different people watch online through the entire thing. So.
And
Oh,
20, well, because Jillian counts as 2. So I think 21 were logged in on Zoom. Well, including presenters.
Yeah, 21 on Zooms. And then our playbacks are still going up. So
That's great.
that'll be good.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.
We'll be in